Guys, welcome to the Next Gen Planners morning commute. I'm obviously not Adam Owen. I think Adam asked us to do our first segment, myself and Rohan, on April the Fools. So I'm not sure what he's trying to say to us. So it is April the 1st. I think we'll all say, thank God it's not March anymore. And so we'll look forward. Ro, how are you feeling today?
Morning, Adam. Very well, thank you. Very well. And I think probably the best thing about doing this as a video conference, Adam, is that we can only see half of the clothes that you're wearing today.
He started already.
So
question: Am I wearing shoes today? What do you think?
Probably. You were kind of a bit weird on that, weren't you? So you have to wear shoes.
I refuse to do video conferences without wearing shoes. I think it's a bit weird, but I wasn't. Not everyone agreed with me on the Slack group. Anyway, my sad humour. Wearing a pair of burgundy chinos to go with this. Yeah. Okay.
Nice, Ron. Come on. So, where are we today? So today, blimey, we've got plenty going on. So we've got our regular Wednesday phone in, and today it's with Ruth Sturkey from Paradigm Norton. We've got Rich Allen from the Paraplanners and Will Robbins from New Model Advisor. And the topic of the day is how to manage clients and teams in a crisis. Now, but first and foremost, we have the news, and the news today is going to be read by Liverpool's very own bum-twitching journalist, Charles Walmsley from New Model Advisor. Walmsley, good morning.
Morning, Rohan.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, as you say, very worried about what's going to happen with the season now, but I suppose there's more important concerns. I do have my
Charles. Charles, at least your team wasn't the first one to furlough all its staff yesterday. Let's just put that out there.
Yeah, no surprises for guessing. Mike Ashley's Newcastle United were the team still that. So so the news today. Big news coming from the FCA today is they are suspending the 10% portfolio drop rule. The rule requiring the portfolio, if the portfolio drops 10%, a letter to be sent to investors. This is something that a lot of people have been calling for, as it's caused a bit of panic among some investors. I don't know if you've read a story that we put out. It was actually an interview with our reporter, Laura Perkis. Her mum had received 2 letters in the space of a week, and she ripped up the first one. And I think that kind of explained what a lot of investors felt about all this. So, so I think that's sort of an interesting decision by the FCA. Clearly, they were concerned about how that was going to affect investors. And then we've also got a story away from all the current latest stuff. James Fitzgerald submitted a Freedom of Information request to the FCA to ask about consolidation. It's something we've noticed the FCA has been paying particular attention to in this year. And he discovered that last year they sent warning letters to 5 firms who were making acquisitions, and 4 of them stopped, although 1 then went ahead afterwards, despite receiving this letter and addressed FCA's concerns. So that is an interest. Again, we want to know who that firm was. But again, it just shows that the FCA is maybe taking a bit more of a harder stance, particularly as they said at the end of the response to his questions that actually they're taking far more informal warning notices, which had stopped acquisitions going ahead. So a reminder that there is stuff happening outside of the COVID crisis at the moment.
Super, great stuff.
Is that it, Charles? Charles, no stock market movements. What's the FTSE doing today?
The FTSE is down 4% opening. After a few days of rallying, it has now started taking a hit again. I think there's going to be a little bit of up and down at the moment for various obvious reasons, but also, I don't know if another story actually that came out this morning is banks have been cancelling their dividends during the crisis after the PRA stepped in to say, look, you might need this money to deal with the financial crisis. So this is understandably, that's probably going to have an impact on the markets. If banks are no longer paying their dividends, are investors really going to be interested in investing in them? So, yeah, I think there's going to be a fair bit of, as everyone knows, a fair bit of market movement at the moment. Yeah, it's going to be a difficult time for everyone.
Perfect. Well, just in true Adam and Rohan style, we've completely cut up the order. So Adam Owen, probably me, yeah. Adam Owen literally wrote us a script, and the first thing I did was go off it. So apologise for that. So I'm going to introduce the man with the best shirt in the room to actually
whoa. Yes.
But I've actually really enjoyed Chris's financial well-being tips, because I think he's really related it to financial planning today. So no pressure today, Chris, but expectations are high.
Thank you, Adam. And yeah, I definitely defer to Rohan's shirt today. At last, I got a decent challenger for my bad shirt, so I'm going to up the game tomorrow. So if anybody wants to challenge me on a bad shirt, I've got some corkers in the closet, I can tell you, don't worry.
Just before you start, are you wearing shoes?
Yes.
There we go.
And I'm standing on a rug. So double bubble.
Very sensible.
So listen, I want to talk about the financial wellbeing tip today is about financial planning reports. There's a really good podcast with the Financial Planning Academy, Steve's podcast, which had the Kingmaker on it. And he was talking about going into somebody's office and asking to see the financial plan. And I thought this was an absolutely cracking point, because he was saying, if you get a file out and you say, so, show me the financial plan, where is it? What does it look like? It doesn't tend to exist. Usually the financial plan is the objectives part of a suitability letter. So, but what actually is a financial plan? So I'm going to make a suggestion of what a financial plan could be, which is a financial well-being report. Right at the moment, I would imagine most of you guys are helping your clients in all sorts of different ways, none of which involve a product. So none of which need a suitability letter. So make a note of them, write them all down. Everything that you're doing, everything you're telling clients to do, everything you're telling clients not to do, which I imagine is quite a lot of things at the moment. Write them all down so that you end up with something that you can present to the client in a few years' time, which would be your financial well-being report. All the things that you have been doing that have helped to make your client happier, not just wealthier. Stick it in the file, bring it out. Don't go over it every year, but update it every year, add to it every year, so that you'll end up after quite a few years with a really weighty document showing all the ways in which you help your clients to be happier.
Super, Chris. Really like that, mate. Really like that. So can you give us some examples of the ways that that's been implemented at your place?
Yeah, so it might be where we've asked the client to stop making premiums to a life assurance because they don't need it anymore. It might be that we've helped them do some cash flow forecasting to afford a trip to Canada to see their kids. It might be a trip to one case with one client to the Ryder Cup that they didn't think that they could afford. All sorts of things. I mean, right at the moment, clearly there's lots of investment stuff going on. Stopping them from cashing out at the bottom of the market might be quite a big one, mightn't it? Anything that is not about products, that doesn't need a letter, write it down and present it back to the client at a point in the future when they're in a good mood.
That's a super tip, Chris. And obviously now is a great time to demonstrate that value that we bring to clients. That's a brilliant way of doing it. Thank you ever so much, Chris, as per usual. Now, swiftly moving on as we whiz through the minutes here, we're now going to go to our topic of the day, which is how to manage clients and teams in a crisis. As mentioned earlier, joining us, we have Ruth Sturkey from Paradigm Norton, Rich Allen from the Paraplanners, and Will Robbins from New Model Advisor. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Morning, Rohan.
Hello. And if you could start popping your questions into the chat, that'd be superb. I've got one to kick us off here, which I will come to you first of all, Ruth, if that's okay. Obviously, huge time at Paradigm Norton, 2 recently integrated businesses, and then all just blown apart again. How are you guys coping at the moment?
Yeah, morning, Rohan. To be perfectly honest, I'm really pleased that we are now part of Paradigm Norton as we try and steer through these unsettling times. It's been all hands to the deck, as you might expect, over the last couple of weeks, but there's been a great effort from all the team, both in terms of communicating with clients, but also making sure our team are all set up and working well from home. So yeah, lots of updates, lots of communication. Do you want me to talk about specifics, Rohan, or?
Please do. Please do.
Good. So I think, well, I was going to say first and foremost, it's about the clients, but it's not. It's also about our team. So I think I need to talk about both of those in equal measure. I think most importantly for our clients, the big thing is just letting them know that we're here. We're on the end of the phone. We're picking up the phone. We're talking to them, and giving really clear messages. Just listen, be empathetic, just be there. And people are more worried about goodness knows what: food, loo roll, family, friends, health, work, income. They'll get to their investments in due course. So I think really it's really just waving the flag, understanding them, and letting them know that we're here. We're obviously arranging remote meetings for our clients using Teams and Zoom, which is working really, really well. And our guys are just grasping that and just getting on with it. It's amazing to see the take-up of technology across the business. But I could talk about clients for ages, but I know we're short on time this morning. I think just to mention our team, I mean, they've been absolutely fantastic. Everybody's getting to grips with being at home and all the challenges that brings, whether that's having other family members around, trying to homeschool. And we're trying to keep it real. So we're having daily huddles, team huddles, cups of teas, coffees, chats, daily check-in with leaders and managers. I think from a people perspective, we're really mindful of people's well-being during these times. And there's this kind of weird thing about when you're at home and you haven't got the commute, actually there's a danger that people actually work longer than they would do normally. And we really want to try to stop that because people have got enough concerns. We want them to get out. The sun at least has been shining when you have that daily walk or whatever, and make sure you're exercising, eating properly, resting, spending time with the family and kids. And I think just finally, I think we also have to be minded that our team might get unwell. People we know might actually get the virus and not be able to work. So have we got contingency plans in place, and do we know how we're going to support people through this illness, whether it's themselves or their family members? So lots going on, Rohan, but fantastic to see how everybody's responding.
Great to hear. That's great to hear. Now, one of our panelists is cheating, by the way, because his business has been set up remotely from day one. So this is just a stroll in the park for you, isn't it, Richard?
Well, in one way, we haven't had to make any big changes. Although, I mean, I'd echo what Ruth said about keeping in touch with clients, letting them know you're there and sending out the right kind of messages. That also applies to your team, who are going through possibly a massive change, in the way that they're working and their lives in general. And we're mindful of that as well. We've got a remote team here and have done for 18 years or so. And even though sort of day to day, there's no change in the way we're working, it's quite interesting to notice the fact that they actually can't go out where they want to and when they want to is having a bit of an effect on the way that they're feeling and thinking, even though working hours is exactly the same. So keeping in touch with them is really important, and I definitely suggest different ways of doing that. So we have a team chat room. There's loads of software that you can use for that. I know that obviously Slack is next gen. We use a system called Basecamp, and it's great to have somewhere where you can drop into and just have a chat or drop some funny pictures or have a rant or something. But it's really important with your team to understand how people actually want to work, because trying to force everybody into a Slack room so they're constantly on the go and replying to stuff could be really counterproductive for some people. Some people might like to just get their heads down and have focus time and just cut away from that kind of stuff. So it's understanding, the different ways that people work when you are keeping in touch with them. That's really key to making this work.
Super. Really, really good advice there, Richard. Thank you. And Will, I mean, how are you maintaining that sort of, I don't know, team sort of ethic within your workplace at the moment when you're all so far away from each other?
Yeah, so we work pretty closely together anyway. So cheek by jowl, I think is the word, on a sort of a desk. Almost like a single desk within CityWire. So it's usually there's a lot of chat between us. Whether sort of useful or just banter. It's quite high energy, and that's sort of necessary part of the process. So working apart, it's actually worked pretty well, but you can see, but a lot of that was carried by the initial energy of, wow, we've got to get this done. We've got to, we've got to be competitive and serve our audience and get the stories out. And so I think as that energy is decreasing, I'm noticing the elastic stretch, that reality, that how far apart everyone is. It's starting to feel like stretched elastic. So early on, I mean, you talked about the huddle. Yeah, early on, I realized we needed an early morning meeting at 9 a.m. to talk through things. I mean, sometimes it seems pointless. I just tell them a few things that I'm up to, and then send them off to do their own meetings, the news editor meeting, the features editor meeting. But I tried not doing it once, and it was an absolute disaster. The next thing is that I've realised that we need one in the afternoon at the end of the day, just not to discuss work, just to talk to each other. Because I realised all our interactions were business interactions, and although sort of light-hearted, we did our first Friday drinks last Friday, and I was like, wow, I'd left that quite a long time to do that. Obviously a bit of a workhouse atmosphere NMA, but yeah, that's really important.
Ro, we've got some good questions. If I can just butt in, Marcus has asked a really good question actually. I'm going to ask this to you, Ruth. Is there anything your guys have learned in the crisis that you look back and thought we should have really been doing that anyway?
I think what's been really interesting to observe. So we've been all of our guys are kitted out with laptops and the ability to work flexibly or remotely, but very few people have been doing it. And I think that's for reasons that either individuals prefer to come into the office and be with the team. I think we've also had a little bit of an attitude from some people within the firm, and understandably, that client service might suffer if people aren't working together in the same office. And fast forward 2 weeks, all of a sudden, everybody is able to work from home very efficiently, very collaboratively. In effect, we are now just one big team. So 75 people are one team, rather than there being a London team and 3 teams in Bristol, a team down in Torquay. And actually you suddenly realise what is possible when we're having to actually do it. So I'm seeing colleagues that would probably call themselves quite tech phobic, just getting on with it because they have to. And I think Matt, who's our ops director, although I'm sure he would have much preferred that we weren't having this crisis as a country and a world, actually what he's seeing is some of the changes he might like to have made to our operating model come into fruition much sooner than any of us had expected. So I think we had the foundations in place. We probably hadn't got very far in terms of kind of building the walls, but all of a sudden we're up to the kind of the eaves and the roofs going on. So it's working well.
Yeah, so just on the back of that, so Gary's asked a good question, which I think is related. Do you think you'll encourage and promote more remote working on the back of this?
I think it remains to be...
So open to all.
Sorry, Will, you were talking.
Well, sorry, I thought you said will, and you meant will as in will you, and I was so, I'm desperate to get a word in. But, Ruth, you people want to hear what you've got to say, not me. It's fine.
Well, just to finish, I think it remains to be seen. But me by way of example, it kind of just I think opens up options for people. We've all got complex lives. Some people have to commute. Some people have got kids to look after. They've got parents to be looking after. They've got maybe activities that they might want to do that bang in the middle of a normal working day. I think this just opens up a raft of possibilities. Ultimately, it's all about communication, talking to your colleagues, your managers, whoever it might be. But yeah, I think I'm totally sure we will continue to have physical offices. I think that makes sense. I think we all love going in and physically being with one another. But yeah, I would expect to see that we have more flexible working patterns coming out of this. Okay. I know Barry's listening, so I hope he agrees.
Yeah.
Nice one. Could I just dip to another question that's come up in the chat actually, and this one's for Richard Allen first of all, which is from Matt Aitchison, which is around the best few bits of tech new or existing for solving problems with remote working for clients. Richard?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we've spent over a decade kind of playing and testing bits of kit, and there's no one solution. So we've got kind of best of breed from all sorts of things. So we use a software system called Basecamp, where we communicate with our clients who are all advisor firms and internally as a team. So that allows, chat rooms, messaging, document exchange, and those kind of things. The best thing about that is it combines a real-time chat room if you want that one, but also asynchronous communication, so long-form messages that people could go into and look at when they want to. And that works really well with however somebody wants to work. So that's what our business is based on. Second thing I definitely recommend is have a decent workflow and task management system that's visible to everybody in the team, because I think that there's a possible problem when people start to work remotely, that they feel a workload is there and they kind of pile stuff in and there's nobody there helping them through managing that kind of thing. And often if they're isolated when they're working remotely, that can be really hard. So having a good system that can set, realistic workflows, realistic deadlines that anybody can see what's going on, that's really important. And also these kind of things. So we like Will, we have a daily team call on video every morning at 9:30, which is really important. And people come onto that one and we do a bit of work, what's going on today, how are you feeling, how can we help, got anything you're worried about. But as a team leader, I can tell just by someone's facial expression or the way they're talking straight away how they're feeling or if there's any potential issues there, even if they don't say anything. So that's really important. And like Will as well, we don't have a video call at the end of the day, but I call around the whole team at the end of the day to see how it went, how they're feeling, what they've got planned for tomorrow. So have a really good way of communicating with your team. That's really important.
That's hugely important. I know that Adam and I were chatting off air about this as well, in terms of, staff are used to seeing each other every single day, Monday to Friday, whichever. So just having that sense of check-in and that kind of stuff is hugely important. Absolutely. There's a question in the chat as well, just around, and I might just bounce this one back to you, Ruth, around getting new business done at the moment, which is evidently proving quite difficult with some providers and the like. How are you finding it from a new business perspective?
So in terms of dealing with clients, we're speaking to them on the phone, or we're jumping onto Zoom meetings and sharing screens and talking them through recommendations and to make sure that they still remain relevant. I think as far as the providers are concerned, we are taking advantage of the ability to use scans wherever possible. I think we're finding, and Transact is the main platform we use, who I think are being incredibly helpful with them all working remotely themselves, and the pressure with tax year end as well, just to add to the fun and games. I think there's some frustration still around wet signatures being needed as opposed to electronic signatures, which I thought that problem had been solved, but the providers seem to be quite slow on picking that up. I know that's not a universal truth, but that's part of the problem we're seeing. And still needing to get an advisor's signature on some documentation, which isn't necessarily easy when everybody's working remotely. I know that with many of the medical, if we're talking about life insurance and things, there's problems with underwriting, which of course makes sense. People can't go and get medical tests, etc. at this stage. So I think we're kind of navigating around it the best we can. I haven't been made aware of any slips in any surface. And I think everybody's just pulling together the best they can, really.
Okay, super, thank you. Adam, over to you.
Yeah, just one more question, if that's okay, Will. What's the bit that you're struggling with in terms of managing your team?
This one is for me, yeah. So the iterative process. So what, I don't know about you guys, but my job is very much like, I'll create a piece of work and then there'll be a check. Did you mean this? What's that? I'm sure it happens in your offices as well, being able to talk to each other. And of course, you're trying to get that as perfect as possible up front, whatever work it is you're doing, whatever project it is, but there's always that checking. And I'm finding that really difficult as time goes on, because we don't, and maybe people could suggest me one, but I don't have a platform right now that allows that kind of open-ended, iterative checking of, is this right? Did you mean that? Can you check that? Is that name right? All that sort of back and forth. And it's becoming, that is a grind. And trying to have things open, like I've got a WhatsApp open, I've probably got Hangouts, someone's trying to talk to me on Hangouts, there's emails going through, and it's not we're doing all right, but it's not long-term solution. I'm looking for a more naturalistic solution. Sometimes I've just left Zoom on in the background while we've worked, and we just had it on for half an hour so that we could just talk to each other without having to constantly log back on. That's by far my biggest problem.
Okay.
I think for us, sorry, one thing just to say, if I may, Adams, I'll be quick. We've got a new person starting today, Dan Atkinson, who's joining us as head of technical. That's really difficult to onboard somebody remotely. So we're all doing our very best to be in contact with him on Zoom and chat and what have you. And he's playing a blinder with his laptop should be with him. He should be set up by lunchtime. But yeah, not the best way for somebody to start their first day.
I can't think of a better person for that to be, though.
Yeah, true.
Exactly.
Right, we've got a few minutes before Adam shuts me off because he's given me a strict 9 o'clock deadline. He likes to keep to time, and I completely agree. So we're going to keep it light-hearted as usual. On Wednesdays, we're gonna have a bit of fun, really. So here we go. April Fools. I've got 5 statements, and I want you to let me know in the chat room what you think is true and what you don't think is true is an April Fool. Okay, are we ready? Right, Japanese long-distance runner Kimo Nakajimi entered the London Marathon in 1983, but got confused by a translation of the rules and thought he had to run for 26 days, not 26 miles. He was discovered after the race was well over, out running in the English countryside. Is that true, or is it an April Fool? Okay. It is an April Fool by the Daily Mail. Okay.
The Daily Mail?
Yeah, the Daily Mail.
Oh, just saying.
That's where I go for all my key news, Ruth.
That one big April Fool.
Right. Coca-Cola was originally green. Is it true or is it an April Fool?
It's true.
Oh, look at this. We have some keen statos on this call. It's true. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. This is a good one. Burger King introduced a new left-handed Whopper in the US in 1998, designed for the 32 million left-handed Americans. The new burger had the same ingredients as the original, but all the condiments were rotated 180 degrees. Is that true, or is that an April Fool?
God, me.
Yes, it's a fool. Okay. Right, this is a good question. Okay, Swiss farmers enjoyed a record-breaking spaghetti crop from the country's spaghetti trees in 1957. Is that true, or is it a fool? Yes. Oh, I've got a couple of truths. Tom Morris has put true. Is he being serious? Okay, and lastly but not least, the fashion designer Alexander McQueen claims to have written a profanity in pen onto a jacket belonging to Prince Charles when he was working as a Savile Row tailor. Is it true or is it a fool? Okay, it is true. Okay.
Oh, I'm 5 from 5.
So a bit of fun to start the day. Okay. Ro, do you want to wrap up?
I shall. Well, thank you ever so much to our panel today. Some brilliant stuff covered there. Thank you for all the questions and all the interaction in the chat. Cheers for the quiz, Mr. Carolan. You can take your shoes off and wander away from your desk shortly. On tomorrow's show, we've got Keith Richards, the CEO of the Personal Finance Society. So really looking forward to interviewing him. We'll have all the usual features. So do get those questions coming in for Keith, and we will see you all bright and early, 8:30 tomorrow morning for your commute.